So hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Karen Shackelford, and we're here for the final oral review of Josh Cohen. Josh is going to talk about rewatching favorite media or repeat watching. There's been different terms as we go through. This is, of course, presenting his dissertation research, and it's part of a line of research that we've also been conducting in the lab. So without further comment, I will turn it over to Josh.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Welcome to my final oral review. And again, my name is Josh Cohen. My dissertation is entitled Development and Validation of Repeat Watching Behavior and Motivation Scale. This is the first psychological instrument that measures repeat watching of TV shows and movies and has a positive, talks about the positive motivations behind it. Before I continue, I wanted to share a note of thanks. When you embark on a work such as this, you realize that you did not do it alone. And so I want to thank my family, my mom, Fran, my daughter, Joanna, for their love and support. I especially want to thank my wife, Carrie, for standing with me through all of this so I could reach my dream. I would like to thank Dr. Gail Stever, without whose mentorship and encouragement, I simply would not be here. She helped encourage me throughout my undergrad and then encouraged me to go to fielding. And then when I took a break for a little while and thinking that I might not return from PhD after my master's, she encouraged me yet again. And so I'm very thankful for that. While at fielding, I've been fortunate to work with and learn from outstanding scholars in my cohort. I want to thank Angel Burns for her constant encouragement and Dr. Perry Reed, who I have had the privilege of working with and learning from in the research lab. I've enjoyed working with fielding faculty throughout my master's and PhD tracks. In particular, I want to thank Dr. Pam Rutledge. She was the instructor for my dissertation prep course. And although I did not travel the exact route that I outlined in the course, the weekly research activities and the time we spent talking over my discoveries helped me bring me to the right place in the end. I also want to thank Dr. Patrick Sweeney, not only for participating as part of my dissertation committee, but as I'll explain a little bit later, it was in Dr. Sweeney's qualitative research course that it really helped me going through that course, and especially the final project, to solidify my decision to explore repeat watching. I want to thank Dr. Melanie Green for being my external examiner on my dissertation committee. I am so honored to have worked with her in Fielding's narrative research lab and to have her on my committee. And finally, I'd like to thank my chair, Dr. Karen Shackelford, who has mentored me throughout this process. Dr. Shackelford's influence as both an advisor and in the narrative research lab has helped me develop my research skills. And it was in the lab that we first looked at rewatching during the pandemic and the substance. We had a team looking at that, and the substance of that. We created administered a survey and wrote up a article that we've submitted right now to Current Psychology, and we're waiting to hear back from them. But I'd like to thank all of you for helping me get to this point. So this is where it starts for me. Story is everything. On the television screen, being a movie or being popular doesn't diminish the value of a story. What matters is that the story takes a hold of our imagination, that we bind to it and belong to it in some way. We are stories. Stories are who we are. So I only have two quotes in this whole presentation. This is one of them. And this is a terrific book, Dill, Shackelford, and Vinny, 2020, explain in this quote how story transcends the media it is delivered through to become part of us. It doesn't matter if it's high literature like Shakespeare or Tolstoy or sitcom. Stories are everything. Stories are who we are. So it's in this context that I would like to add that stories that move us, identify us, and shape us as a culture are those that are repeated. Stories in of themselves have inherent power to persuade. However, a story told only once won't have the longevity to last. Human beings have a penchant for stories, but also to hear the same stories told over and over again. One of the insights, I mentioned the work we did in the narrative lab about rewatching during the pandemic and the psychological benefits or comforts of rewatching. One of the insights we uncovered in the lab was that the the behavior of repeat watching TV shows and movies, uh, it starts with children as earlier than 2 years old. Oftentimes before they can read, they're asking their parents or their caregivers to read them the same story over and over and over again, especially before they go to bed. And so this is not pathology. This is normative development. We're not only wired for story, we're wired to hear the same stories again and again. To better understand how I arrived at repeat watching as a dissertation topic, I wanted to share 4 unique guideposts that led me here. First, I'm an inveterate repeat watcher myself. I have been ever since I could remember. Growing up in the 80s and early 90s, I would watch reruns of 50s and 60s TV shows and movies. And then as I got older, I kept adding titles to my rewatching queue. One event in particular solidified my status as a repeat watcher. In June 1989, Tim Burton's Batman was released in theaters, and this was a huge event in my life. A friend of mine and I went to see it in the theater, and then we went to see it again a week later, and then again a week after that. So we saw it 3 times in the theater, and I couldn't wait for it to come out on, I guess would be VHS back then. We saw it 3 times in the theater. On our fourth attempt, we were in the theater, wanting to get in, and we were turned away by an overly conscientious theater worker who recognized that we were not old enough actually to attend the movie. To do the math, in June 1989, I was 12 years old, and I wouldn't be 13 until September, just a few months away. That was, for her, that was not okay. So she turned us away. And so while I have gotten over that trauma, it was tough. I have gotten over that trauma of being turned away on my fourth time, going to the theater, rewatching Tim Burton's Batman. You can see rewatching is personal to me and has been important to me. And I'm very thankful that not everyone gets to study something that is so personal and important to them. The second guidepost that showed me that repeat watching, and I'll use those terms interchangeably, repeat watching or watching TV shows and movies are important, are the many examples from pop culture. And also, as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm going to share just a little bit about the insights I gathered in my qualitative research course in my interviewing. But first, there are many examples from pop culture. I'm just going to share two. One of which was recently Ralph Macchio published a book called Waxing On, the Karate Kid and Me. And Macchio told a story of being approached by a mom in an airport while he was waiting for a flight. And the mom asked if he would speak to her son because he was a big fan of the Karate Kid movies. And so Macchio learned that the preteen had recently lost his father to cancer, and that the Karate Kid movies provided special bonding between the young man and his father. And so they would often rewatch these films together and share meaningful catchphrases like we do around our house about a lot of the shows we rewatch. And the films were inspirational and provided a point of contact and remembrance for the young man as he developed into an adult himself. And so Macchio discussed, he discussed at that moment being struck with the importance of the work he did. Acting is a job. Often actors remember their former roles in the context of their work life. They remember the things we all tend to remember about our work lives, where we worked and the people we worked with. Whereas fans who rewatch scenes over and over again are hit with different emotions and meanings, and these stick with them. These stick with fans. They don't soon forget them. This is why fans or super fans can often remember certain scenes of TV shows and movies better than the actors who delivered the lines, especially over years, if it's been years and years since the actor was in that TV show or movie. So there are many other such stories in pop culture. Another story is about a man named David Goggins. He's shown at the top right-hand side of the slide. And so Goggins is a former Navy SEAL, an ultra fitness athlete who wrote a self-help memoir and self-published it in 2018. The book became a bestseller and launched Goggins into pop culture. And he wrote about his formative years in the book, how he endured poverty, racism, domestic violence, gun violence, extreme loneliness, and other disappointments to ultimately become a young man he did not like or respect. In his book and in countless interviews since, Goggins credited rewatching the Rocky movies and Iron Eagle movies again and again as the psychological tipping point to his ultimate transformation. So no doubt there were a lot of ups and downs and a lot of effort needed beyond just simply rewatching movies to get him where he was to where he landed as a decorated Navy SEAL, author, and social media influencer. But the man still credits rewatching, even rewatches those movies today as those that have been and still are the driving force behind his endurance. What is interesting, specific to this study that we're going to get into more here, is that these accounts, both of them, the young men, for different reasons, had lost their father and mentor figures in their lives, and the characters in their favorite movies acted as proxies, dispensing wisdom and encouragement. So then in my qualitative interviewing course taught by Dr. Sweeney as part of my final assignment, I had the opportunity to interview two of my former psychology students about their repeat watching experiences. At that point, I knew I wanted to conduct my dissertation on repeat watching, but wasn't exactly sure the approach I would take. I was, to put it in a word, I was flabbergasted at the results of these interviews. Even though the two participants differed in age, gender identity, career, and other areas, the themes that emerged from their repeat watching experiences were similar. The content of the repeat watching was totally different, but the overall themes that surrounded their motivations were the same. So there were many insights, but I'm going to share two quick ones that kind of applied what we're talking about here. Both participants explained how, first of all, participants explained how the content they repeatedly watched informed their identity and goals as people. For example, one participant credited the character of psychiatrist Sidney Friedman on MASH for inspiring him to go back to school for a psychology degree as an adult. The other participant was a professional cosplayer who had a long-term relationship with the Batman fandom, specifically Harley Quinn, which she played on Instagram. Secondly, both participants revealed that some of their favorite content was connected to remembering close relationships, like their fathers or stepfathers. So the anecdotal information, coupled with a small amount of interview evidence I had, confirmed to me that repeat watching was in fact important. The third guidepost for me about repeat watching was the technology and business side of it, the business side of repeat watching. Just to warn you, I'm a bit of a nerd about this stuff. Believe it or not, Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz are responsible for both the technology and the business of reruns. Although these two are most notably recognized for their contributions on screen, their vision and acumen behind the cameras changed Hollywood forever. It all started with the technology, of course. Desilu Studios pioneered the process of the three-camera sitcom in 1951. Before this, television was mostly made in New York and then recorded and transmitted through kinescope. And that's pictured on the left hand of the slide. This was basically filming a TV set playing the show. Then this is how the shows. Then they transmitted this, shipped it to California to play out there. This was cumbersome and very poor quality. Creating a viable way for shows to replay quality content opened the door to the modern day rerun. So I Love Lucy was the first television program to show a rerun. This gave birth to the syndicated rerun market where shows could be licensed to different networks to replay over and over again. The same year that Desilu came up with a three-camera process, Bing Crosby Studios produced the first video recorder. Although crude, it became the prototype for the future iterations, which years later made its way into the homes of viewers as VHS and beta machines. Then, of course, DVDs followed. This gave way to the burgeoning streaming market, which has once again disrupted and changed the media entertainment industry. Streaming may be today, it may be on demand through streaming services or done through the many FAST channels. FAST stands for free ad-supported TV. What had happened to produce FAST channels is that these media companies had a glut of content, and they're like, well, how can we make more money off of this content and not just have it on demand? And so they created these free ad-supported TV internet networks, and it's all in streaming. It's all digital, and so it's a little way to get a little more income off of repeat watching, where they can sell ads on these networks. The industry, of course, is in flux right now as traditional media companies are cannibalized by streaming platforms and social media. Only time will tell what will become of the media landscape. I heard recently that YouTube has the largest share of the television market today at about 10%. This may not seem like much, but the media landscape is so fragmented that 10% is actually a large number. One thing is sure, that people will continue to watch and rewatch, whether it's on TV, movies, short form videos, reels, or TikToks. One event connected to both the technology and the business side of media demonstrates the importance of repeat watching. This was I know the writers and actors had a strike recently, but going back, this is the 2006 writer's strike. The main issue of that strike was the growth of streaming. At the time, Netflix, at that time of that event, Netflix was still sending DVDs to their subscribers, and streaming was still a nascent technology. However, people in the industry understood that all digital platforms were coming. Everybody knew it was coming, and everybody knew that it would expand the ability to watch reruns exponentially. And people have a desire. They don't know all the psychology behind what we're going to talk about today, but the industry at least knows that people like watching reruns of both TV shows and movies. And so writers that were vested in the shows they worked on wanted a fair piece of the residual revenue from streaming. This was the main reason why they were striking back then. The issue was still at play in the more recent writers and actors strikes, but a new technology had taken center stage, which was AI, of course. Repeat watching has always been big business, though. As I reported in my manuscript, recent price tags for the streaming rights to top repeat watch titles confirms the value of reruns. In the business, sometimes these are called legacy shows, legacy media. They've been off the air for a certain amount of time. And so in 2021, Netflix paid over $500 million for the streaming rights to Seinfeld, while in 2019, NBC Universal bought The Office for $500 million. And then Warner Media the same year purchased Friends for $425 million. Of course, not all shows garner this much revenue. Nevertheless, the rerun market is substantial. How substantial, you ask? We don't know. And that is the guidepost. Media companies do not share this data, even internally. This was one of the complaints of that writer strike back in 2006. To me, and they still don't, to me, studying repeat watching encompasses an equity dimension, where creatives such as writers and actors may obtain numbers to substantiate the residual revenue owed to them for their work. It was a surreal moment for me when I realized how shady the business was in this respect. The fact that there is purposely no data out there other than some that is way out of date to be useful, and that only a handful of executives know the accurate rewatching numbers. I know that one study on repeat watching is not going to bring equity to these creatives. However, a psychological instrument that measures repeat watching that can be used in diverse studies by media psychology and communication scholars might provide a tipping point. One final guidepost that led me to my current study was that I discovered there was virtually no academic literature on repeat watching. There was, however, a large amount or a burgeoning amount of literature on binge watching, and these are not the same. Binge watching and repeat watching are two separate constructs. Binge watching content had several features that repeat watching does not. Binge watching typically involves new content, not reruns people have seen before. Binge watching also measures media consumers on a pathological scale adapted from addiction studies. The assumption of pathology means that viewers have difficulty or cannot turn off their screens. They keep watching and watching and watching. In addition, there's a direct negative impact on daily functioning, on their relationships, their ability to work, all these things. And that really doesn't sound like repeat watching. There is a wide range of definitions in the literature about the amount of time spent and the number of episodes of like shows that constitute binge watching. There's not really a consensus out there yet. For example, some studies stated watching 3 episodes of a TV show in a row was binge watching, and another said 2 episodes was binge watching. It was clear that binge watching received a lot of attention in the academic literature, especially during COVID, because it became like the new hot button media issue that researchers wanted to make their mark on. To be sure, binge watching or binge behavior in media exists, and these topics must be discussed. But we have to make sure we're talking about the right thing here. And also, repeat watching can turn into binge behavior just like any other behavioral media addiction. But as I learned from Martin Seligman, one of the thought leaders in positive psychology, historically, psychology as a whole has tended to view behaviors and issues as pathology first and seeks to cure it. And so this reminded me of the axiom, if all you have is a hammer, then you tend to see everything as a nail. So my research has taken a decidedly positive approach to media consumption. This is not saying that binge behaviors do not exist. This is just saying this is something different. This is something separate. Seeing there was no psychological instrument to measure repeat watching, I decided to develop one. So there are certain steps that are necessary for scale development. In attempting to develop a psychological scale, first you must create a bank of questions or items that correspond to the variable you wish to uncover. This is referred to as the latent variable. This is done by examining the literature. Second, you must administer a survey with the items you developed and examine the results with a factor analysis, which reduces the items to only those that are relevant to the variable. And then finally, you administer another survey with the pared down version from the first study, along with a related validated measure to see if there is predictive validity. And so this is what I did. So the first thing I had to do was to actually operationalize repeat watching, because like I said, there was nothing, almost virtually nothing in the literature about this behavior. And so I looked at the behavior first, and to operationalize it, this is what I did. This is how I operationalize repeat watching. Repeat watching refers to choosing to consume media that has been viewed at least once before. Repeat watching would be done in a single viewing or in succession. Video media refers to content that is broadcast via television, streaming, film, or other internet video platforms, for example, YouTube or Twitch. And so with this operationalization, I asked one question or one item I came up with, and the respondents would answer on a 0 to 6, 0 meaning no repeat watching, and 6 all the time, and I'll explain that in just a bit. But one item was I repeat watch or stream TV reruns or movies I have seen before. And so that was the basic question about behavior. And then I started to think that people often repeat watch TV shows and movies while doing something else. And so they may watch or rewatch while they fall asleep, or while they're eating, while they're doing other tasks such as working out, or while on the job. And so I also asked respondents to report on how much they repeat watch TV shows and movies while doing those, while in those other contexts, those other behavior, what I call behavioral contexts. So there's one repeat watching question, and then 3 more regarding repeat watching in separate behavioral contexts. And so that covers the behavioral side of it. Now we're going to look at the motivational side of it and looking at the psychology behind it. And so this is where my experience in the narrative research lab, working with, working on the study about pandemic rewatching and the benefits to it, really helped me here to kind of give me a basis of understanding of where to look. And the first thing that I found was the human need to belong. This is referred to in the literature as the belongingness hypothesis and was established by Baumeister and Leary in 1995 and substantiated many, many times over years of research. The belongingness hypothesis asserts that the need for belonging is on par with food, clothing, and shelter. But just like other needs in the world, people cannot always get their belongingness needs met. And so this led me to the second psychological area where I was able to develop items for the scale is social surrogacy. Social surrogacy posits that human beings can meet their psychosocial needs in non-traditional ways, meaning there's not another person there. They're meeting their social needs or their psychological needs without other people being present. Research conducted by Gabriel and colleagues and Derek and colleagues confirm that people can effectively meet their psychological and social needs without another person being present. And so when I read that, when I got into that, and again, thank you to Dr. Shackelford, because she is the one that introduced this social surrogacy construct to me and sent me down that avenue. And it was really great learning about this and applying it in the study. Is that when I first read this and this literature, I thought about Castaway, the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks, the 2000 film, where his character was stranded alone on a deserted island, and he created and befriended a volleyball that he named Wilson. Not too far from reality, social surrogacy was built on earlier research by Harlow, 1958, that showed that baby monkeys separated from their mothers and they were provided a cloth substitute, would treat these cloths as proxy mothers, and they would treat them as the real thing, demonstrating authentic connection and intimacy with cloth objects. In Gabriel and colleagues' research, they identified separate avenues of social surrogacy, including prayer, spending time with pets, reminders of others, which can include pictures, or even what we refer to as comfort food. The term comfort food has taken on a different meaning in today's popular culture, often referring to high-calorie laden choices. However, in social surrogacy, in that literature, comfort food refers to items that we consume that remind us of others. This does not have to be high-calorie food, but anything that triggers the memory of someone we care for. So like my grandmother's chicken soup recipe, which my wife still makes. One final avenue of social surrogacy that humans can take is through media. Specifically, both Gabriel and colleagues and Derek and colleagues looked at the impact of favorited, and that I'll put it in air quotes, favorited TV shows and on psychosocial well-being. It is important to note that in all these studies, the term favorited was not defined or described, and that's what I focused on. Essentially, this is what my research does. People might make the natural assumption that favorite TV shows or movies are rewatched, but this is only an assumption of a latent variable, and that's exactly what factor analysis is designed to uncover. And so I'm so thankful for Dr. Green for pointing this out in one of her comments to my manuscript, that although repeat watching has never been adequately quantified as a behavior, like in the research and the literature, studies going back to Horton and Wool's 1956 research on parasocial phenomena assumed or took for granted that fans rewatch their favorite shows, celebrities, or characters. It was just kind of always an assumption in the literature. Favorite meant you watched it over and over again, but it was never quantified. It was never studied as a behavior, and that's what I'm trying to do. My research operationalizes and measures this behavior and connects it to certain motivations. Now, I just want to take a moment to connect social surrogacy to the practice and our artistic side of entertainment, And so this is my other quote in this presentation. And in his recent memoir, legendary producer and director James Burrows stated, "Sitcoms are families that we introduce first to first to American audiences, and then to viewers all over the world. They are friends and families we choose that help us connect with our own families. There are often unlikely friendships and always different circumstances at hand, but the shows are invariably about people who form a common, inextricable bond." And so this quote becomes even more interesting when you consider the success Burroughs has had in developing and directing sitcoms, many of which have higher, we think, because we don't have access to the numbers, higher rewatching numbers than many new programs. A few of his successes are pictured on this slide. Don't answer out loud, but can you guess what each of these top rewatch shows have in common in relation to social surrogacy? The answer is that while some depicted familial connections here and there, by and large, these shows were not family sitcoms like Family Ties or Modern Family. Yet Burroughs' quote rings true. These shows portrayed characters that, although most were not physically related, treat each other like family. They spent holidays together and celebrated birthdays and special events together. They treated each other like brothers, sisters, and sometimes parents. I think of Jim and Dwight on The Office, pranking each other like brothers. And so not just his shows, but all of these producers and directors realize this as they bring sitcoms, and not just sitcoms, but I would say dramedies and even dramas that share this connection. So while it's obvious that familial connections made like in family sitcoms, you see that and you're naturally invited into the family, so to speak. Other TV shows and movies make this connection as well, but it's under the surface, but it's there. And as I said, it's not just comedies, it's other, for example, Psych and Monk and these shows that introduce a bit of drama as well as humor. It can also be seen there. They're families, and they invite you into their family, so to speak. So, in my opinion, this is one of the secrets that not only spells success for a TV show's initial run, but why they're watched over and over again in syndication or on streaming. The third area of interest in considering the motivations of repeat watching is seeing TV shows and movies as fictional story worlds. Although fiction is inherently untrue, fictional stories operate according to an established social blueprint. TV show and script writers create fantastic worlds that only exist on paper. However, the people that inhabit these worlds must use a social blueprint that we all understand, or the narrative will be nonsense. We won't watch it, and it'll just be nonsense, and we can't understand what they're getting at. And a great example of this is the classic Star Trek show, or really any science fiction TV show or film. Although the program, although the program portrayed events in a future time and space, and often introduced alien characters, viewers were able to understand, follow, and feel what the characters felt because the scripts all had a social blueprint the people, the fans and viewers could understand. It is often assumed that reading a book or viewing a TV show or film is a solo activity that is devoid of social interaction. However, research has proven this to be untrue. Uh, Very quickly, Dill Shackelford, 2016, outlined several factors in how fiction, whether it's books or TV or films, provides real-world value in social development. Fictional stories act as a social simulator that we as an audience can vicariously experience thoughts and actions and emotions of others portrayed on the screen. Stories also invite social processing so that we can learn empathy, so we can feel the thoughts of others and experience the emotions of other people, and grow in that way. And the stories, as social worlds, invite audiences to store relevant details in their memories. And then these become personally resonant resonant experiences. Think about the young man and the Karate Kid movies with his father. These stories become personally resonant to the individual as they recall these stories along with and remember their loved ones. And so, although TV shows and movies can help us simulate and process and experience social situations, this is all done that the powerhouse behind all of this is narrative transportation. It facilitates this phenomenon. Narrative transportation refers to the process of being enveloped in a story world while simultaneously losing the sense of self in the physical world. Again, this is not pathological. We're not talking about pathologically not being able to tell reality from fantasy. This is what we all engage in to one degree or another. So in my study, I measured narrative transportability, or the penchant for people, uh, the penchant people have for descending into a narrative while drifting away from the physical world. And then there's parasocial connections. Parasocial connection phenomenon was originally discovered from observing the dynamic between TV presenters and audiences and refers to the one-way communication media figures make or have with the viewers. That connection they make. The media figure does not know the audience member exists, but the audience member has a connection, nevertheless, to the media character through the media. And this was found by Horton and Wool in 1956 in their groundbreaking work on parasocial interaction. Fundamental to parasocial relationships is the belief that viewers have that they know and understand the media character. And so since Horton and Wool's initial findings, the research on parasocial phenomena has expanded significantly. It's now known that viewers can form have parasocial interactions and relationships with a variety of fictional characters and real life celebrities. It's not just TV hosts, it's a variety of individuals in media and even on social media. Parasocial relationships are a key component also to social surrogacy. However, I made it a separate thing than just social surrogacy because it is such a vast a store of research behind it. And research has shown that belonging needs have been met through parasocial surrogates via media such as television shows or movies. The final area in which I developed items for repeat watching motivation is nostalgia proneness. Once again, this came from the former research uh, in the lab that we did about repeat watching during the pandemic. Nostalgia is a complex construct that continues to be of interest to psychology and communication scholars. Nostalgia began in the 17th century as an illness. Remember the hammer and nail analogy? Again, always starts off as an illness that needs to be treated. It was diagnosed mostly in soldiers who spent many months or years away from home. As psychology began to take on a more scientific approach, nostalgia was reclassified over many years and has come to be defined today as a sentimental longing for one's past that often can have a positive influence on one's life. Research has shown that nostalgia can be triggered by media in the form of music, written words, images, and video content. And it's also been observed to help maintain and edit one's self-concept. And so this is similar to what I found in my two qualitative interviews, how but with both of them, their self-concept was really continued to be edited and influenced by the titles they repeat watched, and nostalgia was a big part of that. In my manuscript, I discussed different objects of nostalgia. These are physical location, so someone might have nostalgia for a physical location, such as the Empire State Building in New York City, or a fictional place like the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. Someone might have nostalgia over a real person, a loved one, a family member, a friend, a significant other. Also, someone might have nostalgia over a fictional character, someone who does not exist, like Andy Bernard. And I really like this quote from the Office. I think the writers were spot on when they wrote this, and he gave a great delivery in this quote because it is so true. And also, lastly, there's situational nostalgia, where the situations fictional characters find themselves in are very similar to what we go through. And we have nostalgia as we watch them go through them. For example, like getting a new job, uh, getting engaged, getting married, these life events and situations that may trigger nostalgia in us. So all of these things, physical location, physical place, real person, fictional character, and situational nostalgia can be triggered by media. Nostalgia is related to social surrogacy, of course, because they both inspire reminiscences of others. And in addition, they both are sought after during times of loneliness and uncertainty or isolation. In pop culture, there are two examples of this. In the aftermath of September 11th, terror attacks in 2001, the television show Friends saw a bump in their syndicated rerun ratings because they weren't showing anything new at that time in the immediate aftermath of the terror attacks. The show took place, of course, in New York City, where the Twin Towers had been, but now lay in ruin. And so they saw this bump in their ratings, and this was attributed to the fans wanting to return to a time before the world had changed irrevocably. And so they wanted, to be comforted by watching Friends and watching a New York City that wasn't marred by the terror attacks. And then also in our study about repeat watching the pandemic, we found that nostalgia proneness, or the propensity to think positively about the past, did predict rewatching behavior. And in fact, we use an example from The Office. The Office was the number one viewed content on any and all streaming services in 2020. And this is, of course, the year of the height of the pandemic. And this is over any rewatch title, so any legacy content and any new content. By far, it was rewatched way more than anything else. So people look to these titles during times of just uncertainty and isolation. So therefore, I included items about nostalgia proneness in my study. So the study itself, as I went through before, had certain things you have to do in order to validate, to create and validate a scale. And so I developed items based on literature. Usually you only need 2 surveys. I did 3 for a total of 980 participants. Recruitment was through prime panels, and I tested for predictive validity using a similar validated scale, and I used exploratory factor analysis. So the first study, or what I call the pilot study, again, usually there's only 2 studies necessary for scale development. However, I included a third, and I like to say that this was planned, but it was not. And so the first study became my pilot study when I discovered that I left off important items that could not, I could not do a factor analysis with the results from the study. However, it did do a couple things. This study measured the operationalized definition of repeat watching, which is I gave before. I repeat watch or stream TV reruns or movies I've seen before on that Likert type scale, 0 to 6, 0 meaning never, and 6 meaning all the time. And this means a couple times a day. And so respondents answered this question. And for this study, there was 354 participants. The experts say for factor analysis, around 300-ish participants is good. So in each study, that's what I shot for. I didn't get it in the second one because I had to reduce it by a few because there were those that did not fill out or did not answer any of the questions. But in this one, I had 354 participants. The average age was 57.26 years old. And so this did operationalize the definition and the results. Also, the second thing it did, the results confirmed the popularity of repeat watching TV shows and movies. 95.2%. So, spoiler alert, each of these studies, it was in the high 90s of people that reported at least some repeat watching of TV shows and movies. So 95.2% of all participants in this study reported at least some rewatching. Only a small amount reported none. almost half, 43.2%, indicated they repeat watch TV shows or movies at least once a week. This demonstrated that repeat watching is a near universal, routinely practiced behavior among these respondents. And then, uh, again, this first study, there was some things I did that were enigmatic. I'm not sure exactly why I did this, but I know we did this in the uh, in the um, in the study for the pandemic we're watching, and I asked respondents to give me their most rewatched titles in the last 3 months, their most newly watched titles. One thing that was interesting to me about this was in our pandemic rewatching study, 7 out of the 10 rewatched content were dramas, of repeat watched content were dramas. And in this study, it's 50-50. Five are comedies and five are dramas. And we concluded that in the pandemic watching study that the choice stemmed from the uncertainty of the pandemic and the motivation to view content that depicted an injustice being righted within an hour-long framework. And so these results show more equally distributed choices of content, which makes sense when there's no universal uncertain event people are responding to. This leads me to my second survey and to the factor analysis I conducted on the results. And I'm just going to briefly run through the items that I created based on the areas of repeat watching that I mentioned before, the behavior and the motivation items. And so these are the behavioral items. And again, the first one is just, I repeat, watch TV reruns of movies I've seen before. And the next three are, like I said, I do this while I do in the background while I do other tasks. I do this as I fall asleep. I do this while eating a meal. And then moving on to the motivational questions. These are the items that are for nostalgia proneness. And looking back, if I were to do this again, I would have added at least one more item about nostalgia proneness because I know the power of nostalgia, especially in repeat watching TV shows and movies. And two items were just not enough, I feel, looking back. And so these two items were used to measure nostalgia proneness. And this was from Clay Rutledge and colleagues, their nostalgia proneness scale. And it was from 1 to 5, strongly disagree, to strongly agree. And so just I'll make this point now. I did everything I turned into a Z-score because these scales were different. So I had 0 to 6 on the behavioral scale and 1 to 5 on these motivational scales. And so I turned everything into Z-scores to be able to effectively run the data analysis. And so the Cronbach's alpha for this, which measures reliability for these two items, was a little low. And Dr. Green advised in her notes to me about this to run a Pearson's correlation instead, which worked out really well because there was a statistically significant moderate positive correlation. And so I'm glad for that. Then I developed 3 questions comprising social surrogacy. This is from Gabriel and colleagues and Derek and colleagues have written extensively about social surrogacy, especially media and social surrogacy. Again, the Likert type scale was 1 to 5, strongly disagree to strongly agree. This one did also have a lower Cronbach's alpha, but I continued on with that. And then the next were the parasocial connections, the items regarding parasocial connections. The people I watch or rewatch on TV shows and movies are characters I know personally, or they're people I know and care about, or they're people I like as people. And this had a much better score as far as reliability. And then also, or finally, the narrative transportability items. Once again, 3 items for narrative transportability. I can feel what the characters are feeling, identify with the characters in the story, or imagine myself in the events described in the story. And so this had the highest reliability at 384. So out of, and this is the only one that was less than 300 people, out of 284 participants, and it started with over 300. Like I said, I had to drop some because of not answering the questions. 95.1% reported at least some repeat watching. So again, a very high number reported at least some repeat watching. 36.6% reported weekly repeat watching. And the average age of respondents was a little higher than the first one, was at 66.22 years old. And then for the factor analysis. So the factor analysis, as I said, is designed to discover the latent variable. And you do that by loading the factors onto, or loading the items onto different factors. And so there was, in this, two factors ultimately that were retained. It does show three on your screen, but the third one was the eigenvalue was less than one. So the third factor was in fact dropped. So there was two factors that basically emerged from the items that were repeat watching behavior, which is on the right-hand side, the far right, and then repeat watching motivations was on the left-hand side. So repeat watching behavior, this is what you want to see, all of the items that involve repeat watching behaviors or the content, different contexts were loaded on the same factor. So the general question about repeat watching, and then the three items about the context, the different contexts of repeat watching, loaded on the same factor, and then all of the repeat watching motivational items loaded also on the same factor, except for one. So start off with 15 items, it reduced, and this is what you want. You reduce it to only those items that pertain to that latent variable. But only one was rejected. And interestingly enough, it was from social surrogacy. Repeat watching TV shows and movies makes me feel comfortable. And so this is the rest of the items were retained. And so the next step was validation. And this involved another survey. So it's not enough to put together items that relate to a latent variable. The new scale must be tested against an established scale in order to be validated. And I searched the literature I searched high and low for a scale pertaining to fandoms, and there are several out there. And so, because as we discussed earlier, it is natural to assume that a fan of a particular TV show or movie will rewatch it. I was initially nonplussed, though, at what I saw because the fandom scales that I reviewed centered on interaction with other fans, like being a group, the social dynamics of being in the group of fans. And that's fine because that's a significant feature of fandom, but repeat watching may involve being with other fans, but it does not require connection. You don't need to require connection with someone else to be a repeat watcher. So one of the studies I reviewed over and over again was Vinny et al. 2019, where they created and validated a fan identity scale. And full disclosure, I wasn't looking to use Vinny et al. Scale. I was looking because they looked at other fandom scales to validate their scale. So I was looking at what they looked at or they used. And one day it just hit me, why not use the Vinny et al. Scale? Because what I liked about it was that it studied fandom in a more holistic way because it divided fandom into two sections, where one section had to do with a person's relationship to other fans, like the fandom, the group thing. And then the other section involved individual fan characteristics. And that's what I wanted to look at. And so I was able to use the items from involved in the individual fan characteristics to validate my repeat watching behavior and motivation scale. And so the final survey had 354 participants, and I carried over the 14-item two-factor structure from study one. So all of the participants for this study were asked all those questions, and also a 5-item subscale from the fan identity scale. It's important to note, I may have mentioned earlier, but if I did not, that I put it in to Qualtrics that if they took part in the first scale, they could not take part in the second scale. And then if they took part in the first or second scale, they could not take part in the third scale. So each of these, or survey, excuse me, each of these surveys had different participants. So I already went through all of the items from before, but I just want to go through real quick the items from the Vinny et al. Scale. And so the first question is, what is your favorite TV show or movie? And so if whatever they answered to that, if they said Monk is my favorite TV show or movie, then in the next questions, 2 through 5, it would pipe in that text. So the next question would be, how much do you love Monk? The third question would be, how big a fan of Monk would you say you are? Number 4, Monk is relevant in my life. And they would answer on a 1 to 9 Likert type scale. Again, I turned all these into Z-scores because all the scales had different ranges. And then Monk helped me think about things I value. What is great about this is that the Vinny et al. Fan ID scale and my repeat watching behaviors items and motivations items all had really great reliability. So in this study, there was a hypothesis. The repeat watching behavior will predict fan identification. This is the predictive nature of what we're looking for. And then additionally, repeat watching motivations will predict fan identification. And so a simple linear regression was done, and it was used to test these two hypotheses. In line with predictions, both repeat watching behaviors and motivations predicted fan identification. Therefore, the new scale did produce or did demonstrate predictive or convergent validity with an established scale. Very happy about that. Also, just in line with the other two surveys, 97.7, so almost 100% of participants reported some rewatching or repeat watching. Over half this time, 52.1% reported weekly repeat watching. This study, the first two studies did not do this, but this study reflected the current U.S. Census, and so in prime panels, you can set the demographics to have these quotas. And the first two didn't have any quotas, and you had the first two studies, the average age was a little higher, and the average age for this one was a little lower because it reflected the current U.S. Census, which was 47.56 years old. And so repeat watching TV shows and movies, and this study, putting all the pieces together, there's a few takeaways. First of all, as we said, that repeat watching TV shows and movies is a near universal behavior to differing degrees. Some will only rewatch at certain times of the year, like holiday time. They might have their favorite holiday favorites. Others will rewatch several times a week or several times a day. Over, as I said, 980 participants over the course of 3 studies, only a very small percentage reported no repeat watching. And so the factor analysis, of course, conducted with the results of study 2, produced those 2 factors from the items derived from social surrogacy, nostalgia, parasocial connections, narrative transportability, and repeat watching behaviors. And so the results of the study suggest that people can meet psychosocial needs through repeat watching TV shows and movies. This is by no means a panacea. As a matter of fact, Gabriel and colleagues did a study with social surrogacy, media social surrogacy, and people with PTSD, and the results were not as positive. With trauma such as PTSD, mediated social surrogacy may enhance feelings of isolation and loneliness. So this is by no means a panacea for all types of issues or problems or trauma, but characters can act as proxies for real-life individuals. The 2 retained social surrogacy items suggest that repeat watching helps viewers remember favorited TV characters with whom they have a parasocial connection and provides a hedge against loneliness. And so then both retained nostalgia items indicate that repeat watching helps viewers to be reminded of earlier times in their lives. This may be a time when they first watched that show or movie, or they remember a real world physical life time they wanted to relive. And the study also confirmed, as we discussed earlier, about the role of parasocial phenomena in repeat watching your favorite TV show or movies. Fans get to interact parasocially with those they enjoy when they repeat watch a TV rerun or movie. Remember, parasocially meaning they don't know you exist, but there's a connection there. They're visiting friends, like the slide. You're actually visiting friends when you repeat watch your favorite TV shows and movies. Just like James Burrows' quote, you're spending time with the people you care about. So in this context, repeat watching viewers feel that the characters in their favorite TV show movies are people they know personally, as we said, and they're returning to them because they care about them. And they continue this one-sided relationship, which allows the viewer to decide when and how often repeat interactions are needed to sustain the parasocial relationship. So it's all up to the viewer. They have the power, I guess, in that relationship. The retained narrative transportability items suggest that people repeat watch to visit favorite story worlds and to hear stories told over and over again. As we discussed briefly in the beginning, human beings have an intrinsic desire to hear the same stories told over and over again. We can readily see this in religious and cultural contexts. Hearing the same stories reinforces our identity and worldview and produces self-consistency. An example of this, a personal example of this, one of my favorite shows to rewatch is Barney Miller. This was a sitcom about a police detective unit in New York City in the late 1970s and early 80s. And so I was just a small child when the show aired. So I've only ever watched it in syndication, DVD, or streaming. But I've thought about over the years why I like the show so much. And beyond the fact that it's funny and depicted a group of friends, again, that operated like a family, just like James Burrows explained. As an adult, I came to realize that I love the way the show portrayed these fallible detectives, these people that were just trying to do their job, as fallible as they were, being empathetic and using humor to help people with complex problems. Oftentimes, the people they dealt with had mental illness. Many, many times, the show depicted that, and they dealt with it with humor and empathy. And I realized as an adult, realized why I really love the show. It was a depiction of empathy that connected to my own identity. And every time I rewatch the stories, they reinforce the way I feel about myself and how I want to treat others. Speaking of empathy, Ted Lasso, the validation of the repeat watching behavior and motivation scale provided by the simple linear regression results with the Vinny et al. Scale meant that the new scale had convergent or predictive validity, as we said. The repeat watching behavior motivation scale has this predictability now and can be used in the future to measure repeat watching in other studies. And that was my goal. Beyond this, the hypothesis that repeat watching behaviors and motivations both predict fan identity and suggest that fans will tend to repeat watch their favorite TV shows and movies. It kind of it kind of says, yes, all of you that assume that you're fans of a show, of TV show or movie, you must rewatch it. You're right, they do. And this research proves that. In addition, fans are motivated to rewatch favorite titles to reap psychological or psychosocial benefits through social surrogacy, nostalgia, parasocial connection, and narrative transportation. Convergent validity with fan identity suggests that repeat watching TV shows and movies carries a significance in one's life that will influence what that person values. So we watch ourselves. We're looking for ourselves and our values as we look to watch and repeat watch. And of course, the study had a few limitations. And the first one I've already really said is the pilot study, which wasn't supposed to be the pilot study, but it did operationalize repeat watching, but it was not set up to discover really anything beyond proving that or showing that, and to show the frequency of repeat watching and the most rewatched titles. Second, each study used a convenience sample, as you said, through prime panels where participants were compensated, and nevertheless, the demographics were confirmed. And thirdly, the studies were limited to English-speaking people in the United States citizens, and so these findings may not generalize to non-US samples. Fourth, the capability of study 2 to provide information pertaining to the causal direction is limited because these studies were cross-sectional, and so future research should look at repeat watching in a longitudinal experimental approach. And finally, these studies concentrated on voluntary repeat watching of TV shows and movies and did not represent all video media that there possibly could be. Of course, that's expanding every day, such as YouTube videos, like short form videos, Twitch streams, TikToks, Instagram Reels, and such. And that's really my goal, to be used. Eventually, something like this can be used in a variety of different repeat watching scenarios and research. And so therefore, the scale may not yet generalize to social media video repeat watching. And then so subsequent studies should utilize repeat watching behaviors and motivation scale with other video content so it can be seen as versatile. This concludes my final oral review presentation, and thank you for watching.
All right, first, let's have some applause. Yay! Wonderful. So Josh, there's a little copywriting stuff in your future. You're going to be turning in some documents, but let's just celebrate the fact that you have completed your dissertation requirements and done so wonderfully. As I said, I'm going to open it up to your committee first, starting with Dr. Sweeney and then Dr. Green, and then I'll take a turn and then we'll open it up to everyone. So Patrick, I invite you to make your questions or comments.
Thank you, Karen. This was a fantastic presentation, Josh, and just a really great dissertation. I was really glad to be a part of your committee. And I'm also very glad to see that the qualitative course was helpful. You know, I think it's an excellent example of using qualitative research as a kind of pilot study or to develop, generate hypotheses, which is a very classically social psychological tradition, I think. So I also appreciated, how you opened today with this kind of beautiful link to the very human practice throughout history of telling and retelling stories and the importance of that. I think, when we think about the importance of narrative, that we don't always think about the retelling. And so, I appreciated you bringing that in. And I was also thinking, I sort of wondered what you thought. I appreciated that you brought in kind of the technological and economic aspects of rewatching. And I was thinking about, streaming services and the ability of us to watch so many different, media now. And the fact that, you had been talking about, and then it made me think about, rewatching things on VHS tapes when I was a child. And so I was wondering what you thought, if there was perhaps, maybe there isn't, an effect of the growth of streaming services on people's rewatching behaviors. Does it, increase the access to it, or because there's more options, do people do it less? Or if you had any thoughts about that.
Yeah, and so that was the premise behind the 2006 writer strike. They knew that the streaming market would grow people's penchant for repeat watching exponentially because uh, you had media companies that acted as gatekeepers to content. So like growing up, you could rewatch a movie or TV show on TV, or you could get a VHS or beta and then eventually DVD. But these restricted people to, you had to buy these, and so now with the streaming services and the model of becoming a subscriber, it has opened the door, and that's the issue. That's all equity issue that I'm, that hopefully something like this would help to eventually alleviate, as people could use this in more and more studies, is that they're not getting paid what they are, the creatives are not getting paid what they should be, because the numbers have skyrocketed, but it's under lock and key. And the more choice has led to more repeat watching. However, as I said, the business as a whole is in flux, and so there's kind of like a heyday of rewatching or repeat watching on streaming services. But these are all, everything is changing with social media being the first place people go now. Where a lot of people go for any media, and so this is, streaming services are trying to keep up, all the while, like I said, cannibalizing older companies, and just trying to dominate. And people are repeat watching, and so the idea is that hopefully a scale like this could be applied to not only streaming but also online and short form videos, which is becoming the number one watched and rewatched thing right now. These short form videos, especially like on Instagram, they are becoming very popular. So yeah, the technology, just like it did with interestingly, just like it did with Desilu, and how they created the market for reruns. It certainly expanded that market. It created it and then it expanded it. People just were voracious consumers of reruns, and still are.
That's great. Thanks.
Thanks, and Melanie?
Yeah, Josh, I just want to echo the praise. That was a really wonderful presentation and set of research. And I do especially love how you brought in the media industry portion of that, because I feel like that's something that often, as media psychologists, we get so focused on the individual that we don't always go up to those different levels. And so, yeah, I thought that was a really fantastic way of framing it. And you actually kind of anticipated my question in your answer to Patrick's question about, how things might be the same or different with the trends and what people are watching with these short forms. Because it kind of feels like there's maybe different motivations, like, the online stuff maybe is funny or, topical. It's not getting people connected with like their online family, or not online, but, their on-screen families like you described in your presentation. So, not so much a question, but I feel like your research really springboards into a very fruitful research area where there's a lot of exciting questions that you can continue to explore or inspire others to explore. So, I mean, really just great job.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go. So Josh, I really cannot put into words what a pleasure and a privilege it has been to work with you. And I hope to continue to work with you for a long time. You've made me fall in love with these areas and see all kinds of different facets of them. So thank you so much for going on this journey with me and our colleagues here at Fielding. So I have a suggestion for anyone who wants to do this research, including us in the lab, to think about. I think one thing to consider is that people still have a bit of, I don't know if shame is probably too strong a word, but resistance to telling how much TV they watch, I think, and what they're watching on TV. So if we ask them straight, like, do you watch TV when you're feeling lonely? They might say, like, I can't say that, that'll make me look bad. And you ask them like how often they rewatch. I am betting that they're underestimating it. I wonder if we could ask them, what did you watch Monday night? What did you watch Tuesday night? And just see like what they could remember, because I bet they're repeat watching more than they just remember. It's a nuanced thing, but like asking some kind of meta question versus asking something really directly, I wonder if they would tell us more. Oh yeah, I did actually watch one office episode every night this week, or I watched 3 on Thursday, or whatever it might be. Just I was thinking about that. And a thing that we didn't maybe follow up on that one of our colleagues, Brian in the lab, had suggested if we ask them, let's say, Karen, what did you watch Monday? And I'll say Perry Mason, of course, because I watch that like every night. And then I watched something else. And if you asked me, have I seen that episode before? I could put that. And then is the episode totally new to me? Is the show totally new to me? And then this is the thing Brian Jacomar suggested, is it part of a franchise that I have watched before? Because like NCIS, we found out was so, that people repeat watch it all the time. And there's all these different offshoots like Hawaii and this, and, all the shows have the different versions. So even if they're watching a new episode, it's different if it's utterly new, a new show to them, or if it is something that's in a franchise that they already watched. So I feel like maybe that's a way to dig more into resisting the shame. I remember once, like an icebreaker at a meeting at work here at Fielding, I asked people like, what are they a fan of? And I swear to you, people were like, I listen to NPR. It was just like, okay, they're actually watching The Real Housewives of New Jersey, I know, but they're not telling us. So I don't know, a way, like for real, we're not telling anyone. You can watch The Real Housewives if you want. So those are my comments, and then you could comment on that or not, and then we'll open it up to everybody. Anyone else here? Would you like to ask Josh a question or make a comment?
I just want to say congratulations, Josh. You did an awesome job. Fantastic. And I'm just inspired by you. It gave me encouragement to go forward myself, because you did such a really good job, and I'm just really happy for you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Or we know it, it's going to be you, Debbie.
If no one has questions, I'm dying to jump in.
Please.
Yay! Congratulations, Josh. I am so proud of you. I'm so impressed. I send you a bazillion cyber hugs, high fives, double thumbs way up. It was fantastic. I knew it would be. I think most people know your work ethic, your excellence. I always say you're like the swan gliding by in beauty. Nobody knows how hard you work beneath the surface, but I know. And I can so appreciate the quality and the joy you bring to it. You're a kind soul, and it comes through in the work. And I hope after so much work, you take that joy and do a Snoopy happy dance somewhere. Be a little selfish to revel in this achievement. You're amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you.
Angel, side note, it reminded me of your dissertation that one might ask, what is your most treasured TV show, or what are some of your treasured TV shows?
Yes.
Because there are different reasons, of course, for watching, and some, like Angel and I have discussed MASH, I would say I treasure that show. And other things are more for fun, or something else about it, but there are some that just we have a deep connection to, so I wonder what they'd say about that. Other folks? Brian?
Yeah, Josh, I'd echo everything that's been said here. Fantastic study, and kudos to you for all you've done in the program. You make everybody proud and reflects so well on the program. Content-wise, I had a kind of a question, or maybe it's a suggestion about something you might want to consider in the future, and that's, what are people doing when they're rewatching? When you're watching for the first time and a new episode comes on whatever show, you're actually watching it, right? But I have a suspicion just from my own habits that rewatching is a divided attention task. You might be, washing dishes, folding laundry, doing other kinds of work that rewatching doesn't necessarily require all the attention that watching for the first time does. And I wonder if that's just another dimension that is worth examining at some point. What is the rewatching accompanying?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I did ask those questions in the second and third study. So I asked them to report the repeat watching while doing other tasks or while falling asleep or while eating. I didn't share those results here because for sake of time. And so I haven't really formulated really what to really do actually with those results. Those are more like big picture questions looking forward, like you said, like how much attention is needed to repeat watch, and is it mostly done while doing something else? And what is the significance of that? And how does that help? So like in my manuscript, I led off with a little vignette about how a woman who loved Friends would go to the gym and watch Friends every time she worked out of the gym. And then one day she showed up and the station had turned the content into like a sports station, and Friends was gone. And it really hit her very hard. She didn't realize how much she depended on seeing them every day, every time she worked out. And she realized, and she actually was a Friends aficionado and a Friends historian. Also, she wrote a book about it. But this is how people interact with their favorited content. They take them along with them, like you're saying, while they do other things. And I'm not quite tapped into the significance of that. I've reported on it in my manuscript, the numbers wise, how much they do it, but I haven't really looked into exactly why they do it in different scenarios, in different contexts. So I appreciate that.
We could go back with, if we were asking them, would you watch Monday night? We could ask them other things about it. Were they doing another task while they were doing it? Or, people have asked in different contexts in media psych, are you doing with other people and what's happening there? One thing we could do also is, are you talking to other people during it? Because I watch Perry Mason with my husband Lee, and I always talk, one of my primary things is there's always some kind of sexist thing, like a woman couldn't do that. And I'm always like, what? So I couldn't just like let that go. And it's a self-expression thing of really like she has to do that in heels or whatever. But so are they watching it? Because we've seen these multiple times and we're talking to each other and joking around as we watch it. But also just am I folding laundry? Am I walking in and out of the room? That sort of thing. That's one thing. Another thing I have in my notes here is just more about what is it about the content. So it's many things, but I was joking to my husband that one of the reasons I love Scooby-Doo, and I do, is because they're good to each other. Like, Fred's never going to knife Daphne, he's going to be there. Like they're going to have each other's backs. And in a more in a show that's more mixed, like a dramedy, like the first time I watched the first episode of Schitt's Creek, I said to myself, I'm not watching this because they're not good to each other. And one of my close friends said, you've got to hang in there because they grow and they develop and they do love each other and they become better people. And that's true. And so it's maybe even more satisfying that they started out just reprobate and they learn to get better. But I've asked fans about this too, like, what is it about the people? And are there also other times they violate that? Your wife and I were talking and we feel the same way about Poldark, about a certain thing that happened on Poldark. I'm like, I am out. I cannot keep watching the show given the violation there. So what is about the content that you want to keep watching? And Isabel, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, something similar too. I was wondering not only the content, but the access to a specific platform and how that will shape the type of content that you start getting used to, because we know that there's so many platforms and everything's divided. We don't have one that has everything. So if you only have a few choices of shows that you made, or comedies that you like comedies, and you only have maybe 10 choices on Netflix, and that's the one you have, that's the one you're going to end up watching. So I'm just wondering what the impact of access on all of this. And thank you, great presentation, I appreciate it.
Thank you, and that's a great point. The proliferation of content it continues to explode. I don't think we can continue to keep up the pace we are, because content continues, of course, new content continues to be put out every year. And so that's why the example I gave of the FAST channels. So these media companies had, basically what happened was they had all this content sitting around their vaults, and they're like, how can we make money from this content that if we just put it, the platforms already have so many choices. How can we just make a little bit more money off of this? And so they develop these fast channels where they sell advertising for repeat watching movies and TV. It cannot, like I said, it's in flux. The entertainment industry right now, I don't think it can continue the way it currently is, with the continued glut of choices. I think you're going to see something change. I don't know exactly what. It could be something to the effect of a pass that allows you to go to multiple channels, multiple streaming services. I know right now there's that ability. You can sign up for one, and of course they're always trying to sell you, well, why don't you add, we have Prime, so we have Prime. They're like, oh, why don't you add the BBC channel, or BritBox or whatever, and why don't you add this, and why don't you add that. Right now that's okay, but as what you're saying, the amount of content continues to add up. They're going to continue to look for ways to try to deliver this content and make there's going to reach a saturation point of the money they can make the way they currently deliver the entertainment media. And so eventually it's going to be where that is going to reach a tipping point. And of course, that's not acceptable. And they're going to have to change. They're going to have to do something different with the choices. I'm not exactly sure what it's going to be yet, but yeah, you're right. It's just so many. And the thing is, we've all seen this. I think that at least for a while now, still, people will change platforms. People will leave one and go to another because they have The Office, or they have Friends, or they have Seinfeld, or they have these big named, what I call anchor shows that, provide the stability to, that's why they pay so much for the rights to stream them. And they'll actually leave one platform, or maybe not even leave, but add another one, simply because it has this one show or these couple of shows that really they rewatch all the time. Another one is How I Met Your Mother, is a big rewatch title as well. And so these shows really inspire people to make decisions with their wallets and with their checkbooks about what platforms I'm going to have. And so it really follows the content. But eventually, as I said, it's just going to grow so exponentially. They're going to try to figure out another way. The technology is going to have to change a bit, just like it did for Lucy and Desi, and how it did for streaming and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's what's going to happen.
Any other comments or questions? All right, well, this was so impressive and enjoyable, Josh. Excellent job. There are many, many people on this call and elsewhere who are very proud of you. Congratulations. I hope you guys take the weekend off and enjoy yourselves and just let it all sink in.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming, everybody. Thanks for all your questions and comments. See you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.